Morning, I'm Ricardo Brooks.
And I'm Tona Thomas.
On the final stretch now, and it's time for all things real estate. The function of the Commission of Strata Corporations is to monitor, regulate, and supervise strata corporations. This entails the keeping of a register of strata corporations, facilitating the resolution of disputes between a strata corporation and a registered proprietor, considering complaints from proprietors that the amount of the maintenance fee is unreasonable or inequitable, and enforcing the bylaws. So joining us now to discuss these powers of the Commission of Strata Corporation, we're being joined by Director at the Real Estate Board and Commission of Strata Corporations, Howard Johnson. Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Welcome to Nationwide this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Carter. Good morning, Tana.
All right, let me ask first of all, for people like me and Tana, more so Tana, but still, what is a strata?
Okay, well, a strata is a property that has a unit that sits on top of each other that shares common wall or boundaries in terms of the space. And your strata lot is, in fact, the property which lies within the building, such as from wall to wall, from floor to ceiling. Anything on the outside of that, such as an apartment, would be considered the common area. So the strata complex is a composite of all these strata lots, and the strata lot is what is within the unit itself. So if you look at a typical apartment building, that would be considered a strata. If you look at a townhouse, that's a difference where there is not a common boundary between the properties.
And so that's why we hear about things like strata fees.
Correct.
And how are those calculated?
All right, so strata fees, and we refer to them as contributions to the upkeep of the common space, which is the swimming pool, the guardhouse, the garbage, etc.
So if you want to live in a pretty apartment with a nice pool like Tana aspires to do, then you have to pay strata fees.
Aspire or aspired.
That's right, Howard. That's right.
All the things, right, Tana? Yes. So once you have these amenities, it is required for a contribution to be paid by all proprietors, and proprietors meaning owners, towards the upkeep. And that is done by the calculation of unit of entitlement, which sometimes come across very confusing because you have the natural tendency to say, okay, there are 20 units in the complex, let us divide it by 20. But in fact, there's a formula that's listed on the strata plan and is observed on a title where it's apportioned by a percentage, or I should say allocation. So a one-bedroom may not pay the same as a two-bedroom, or a two-bedroom may not pay the same as a three-bedroom. So we have what is called an aggregate, and you divide the total sum of that budget by that aggregate to find a single unit, and then you multiply it by the unit of entitlement.
Okay.
So it's a process, and property managers and executive committees would be able to guide proprietors in that regard.
And is there any kind of stipulation as to how often, or if any at all, these fees are increased?
No, there's no stipulation as to how often they're increased or by how much, because that's going to be a function of a budget, which should be presented every single year at an annual general meeting. So at the annual general meeting, the budget is presented. It may or may not increase, and that may move because of the change in the dynamics or economic climate. But in some cases, it may remain the same. But the Commission of Strata Corporation does not mandate an increase. That is a function of the elements that comprise of the budget.
So what happens if residents or proprietors, they are not paying their strata fees?
Oh, if they're not paying their strata fees, then the Strata Corporation, which is in fact the apartment complex, they have within the rights and within the law the opportunity to apply for a power sale certificate after someone is delinquent for at least 30 days. That simply means, similar to a mortgage, if you default on a mortgage, the mortgage company can sell your unit, recover their arrears, and pay you the difference. And similarly, if you are delinquent for more than 30 days in a strata, the executive committee, along with the corporation, will have the powers to apply to the Commission of Strata Corporation for a power sale certificate.
And this power sale certificate, you're saying, would effectively give the persons the authority to essentially sell your unit,
Yes.
give you the difference, and put you out.
That is correct. That's an order that can be given by the Commission once the documentations and the processes are followed. There is also another remedy, which is an order of enforcement. So in this in order of possession, in the event that the unit is vacant, the Commission can give order for the strata to claim ownership, rent the unit, collect income from that rental, and once they are, satisfied with their delinquents, they can lock it back up and, the owner can proceed. So there are two remedies for outstanding maintenance.
Interesting. And how long would one have to be delinquent for this? The title of it is, I'll get the power
Sales certificate.
The power sales certificate. How long
Yes.
would one have to be delinquent before we get to the point of trying to acquire something like that?
30 days.
Oh,
Once
just
you are
1 month.
outstanding for at least 30 days, you can apply for that power.
And here in Jamaica, Howard, how expensive do strata fees get?
It ranges from as low as possibly, so in some stratas 2,000 to as high as some 80, 100,000. It all depends on the areas that are comprised in the common space. So if you look at a complex that doesn't have an elevator, just 10 units in the complex, little green space, it may not be as much. You may be paying $5,000-$10,000, but if you look at an elaborate complex rooftop entertainment, so the pool is on the roof, jogging trail, 2 elevators, lots of greenery, 24-hour security. Now that will now push your budget, very high, because you have to compensate for these amenities.
Put simply, if you want good, it's a run.
Well, exactly, and it's a big component of that budget is usually security, and persons move into these gated communities because they like the sense of security. And recently there was a ruling, as you may be aware, that the security guards had to increase their fees to get their workers to be considered employees, right? So that has placed an additional burden on Strata Corporation. So when you're thinking of a complex that has 24-hour security and you immediately see a 50% increase, that goes to your point, Donna, that will now require increase in maintenance fees. Right, so it all depends on the dynamics of the property that determines the budget. And the owners have to slice and dice to get to where they're comfortable at that annual general meeting.
Here's a question for you from one of our listeners. Calvin Carr is asking, at what point should you start paying strata fees?
And let me put the terminology into perspective, because strata fees can be misrepresented. It may come across as though that amount that is paid to the Commission of Strata Corporation, that is done annually through your annual returns. As it relates to maintenance contribution, which most persons refer to as strata fees, as they have asked, that is paid once a strata is formed by all proprietors. So I'll walk you through briefly. When the National Land Agency issues 20 titles, the corporation has been formed. And if you are now starting to incur expenses such as light, water, security, then all proprietors that own should now begin to pay that maintenance.
Whether they have moved in or not.
Whether they have moved in or not. And it's likely that the developer will be the first owner that owns all 20 units until he sells his first unit.
Right.
And as he sells those units, he will then pay his maintenance for all the units that he owns. And then he sells one, he now pays for $19, one pays for the first. But the Strata Corporation is formed once the National Land Agency issues those splinter titles, and you have 90 days to register the strata that exists with the Commission of Strata Corporation, and your first expense could likely be the registration fee to the Commission of Strata Corporation, and that is allocated by all the owners that own at the time, because it's not a body corporate, a company.
And I see him asking, what if the Strata Committee is not yet formed?
If the Strata Committee is not yet formed, it's still the remit of the owner or the owners to pay their obligations. And usually in a sales agreement, there is prepayment of maintenance, sometimes 2 months or 3 months prepayment of maintenance. That goes to the credit of the association if it is termed that way in the sales agreement. Therefore, at least 2 to 3 months, there would be enough reserves in the kitty to take care of the expenses until that first meeting is held. And that first meeting is usually held, within 90 days or after the registration of the Commission of Strata Corporation.
And
If they have failed to do so within the stipulated time, then it will now be an indictment of the strata, and you should demand a meeting to form your executive committee, if not yet formed within the stipulated period of time.
And if you're paying your strata fees and you realize there's poor maintenance of those common areas, the elevator doesn't work, the pool
Yes.
isn't clean, there's overgrown lawns and so on, what relief, if any at all, do residents have?
Well, the Commission of Strata Corporations, CSC, does have a facility which we refer to as dispute resolution, where a proprietor can take their strata before the commission for failure to carry out its duties, such as the maintenance of the common spaces. And upon hearing both sides of the story, the commission has the power to give an order for that to be remedied. And that is based on the evidence, as I mentioned, that is brought before it. And vice versa, the strata can do a dispute resolution against a proprietor who may be very disruptive, who may have caused damage, for any reason. So once the bylaws, which are the governing documents for the strata, is breached, there's a facility, dispute resolution, that can facilitate that discord between proprietor and the CSC. And the corporation.
All right. Howard Johnson is director at the Real Estate Board and Commission of Strata Corporations. Thank you so much, Howard. Really appreciate your time this morning.
You're more than welcome, and I look to see you at your next strata. Tana has hers, so I'll meet with you at your next one.
Very well, Howard Johnson.